Well, adult art panel, and in Gladys this over, I'll be the moderator for this event. I am one of the co-founders of Grayslake Authorfest. The late first is in heartfelt thanks to result of co-founders Melanie Francisco and to Latson. Also, everyone else involved to make Grayslake Authorfest happen for a for an annual event. We truly hope you're enjoying ourselves. We ask that you please silence yourself from students and also not to shut the audience so they're speaking and you in advance for your cooperation. The four artistic careers are ready to work in the young adult, new adult, has the temporal unique experience in the world of writing. This panel is constructed and fun and the program always solves. Each of our four panelists will introduce themselves. After that, I have a series of questions I'll be asking. Each author will be asked different questions based on the author who was not asked a question, wishes to add anything, they'll be the opportunity to do so. Each author will have up to 3 minutes to answer. We will leave at least 10 minutes for audience members to ask questions at the end of the period. So, authors should take your rights to introduce yourself. Please tell us your name, which genres you write in, whether you're self-published, indie published, visual published, or looking about your books. We can start with Holly. Holly. Sorry. You're fine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly Davis. My pronouns are she, her. I am traditionally published. My debut novel came out November 2024, so she's a little over 6 months old. This is A Diamond Bright and Broken. It is a young adult fantasy, the first of a duology. So hopefully book 2 will be out in summer of next year. But I pitched this as a tangled retelling with a gender-bent Flynn writer. I really wanted to have a lot of representation in this book. So there's disability rep with wheelchair user, LGBTQ rep with the sapphic romance, and BIPOC main characters, biracial main characters, because I'm biracial, so I like having that representation. So if that sounds good to you, you should enjoy this book. I am also the host of the Diversity is Lit book club, which is over on Goodreads, where we read one book by a BIPOC author every month and discuss it on my YouTube channel, which is Write, W-R-I-T-E, Holly Davis. So I would love to have you join us for that too. It's nice to meet everyone.
Intellect. Hello, I'm Intellect Corral, she, her, and I traditionally publish an independent publisher from North Carolina, but this is my book, Mark in the Road. It's young adult, and the main character has like a supernatural ability to see the visions behind the skid marks on the road, so fascinated by the skid marks that I've driven over. And so he can see what caused those in his, floods his brain. But he goes on a cross-country road trip with next-door neighbor, longtime crush, and there's a missing woman 2,000 miles away, skid marks by her abandoned car. He's hoping he can maintain his secret, but maybe shed some light on what has happened to the woman. This is my first book, came out in October 2023, won the 2023 Illinois Author Project Award. And my second one has a revision that was supposed to be done like 3 weeks ago. And I really will get it done this week. So,
At least you got it done.
Yeah. Thank you. Carol.
Hi, I'm Tara N. Gabrice. I write romantasy, fairy tale retellings. She, her. So this, Under a Violet Moon, is my young adult fantasy. This is my debut. It came out January of 24, and it's very young adult. It's mermaids, because that is my heart and soul. And then this is my new adult Snow White retelling, The Fall of Snow. It is part 1 in a duology. So I'm currently drafting the second book right now. And then I also wrote an adult romantasy that is currently on submission with publishers right now. So there is no release date, but I'm very excited and hopeful. So hopefully it should be out soon.
Andy.
Hi, I'm Maggie Lynn. I wrote, she, her. I wrote Marked by Destiny. It's my debut novel. It's the first in a series. I categorized it as new adult. So in this, you are following Ira on her journey to discovering why she was not gifted a destiny birthmark like everybody else in the land was when she was born. And the more she uncovers about herself and the more she realizes, what her destiny is, she has to start to wonder if it's actually a gift like she always thought it would be, or if it's more of a curse.
That's well. Okay, frame the answer the question. First, for me for Ansley. How would you define the young adult as a genre, and what are some key aspects or elements about that you see in books?
Young adults, I think, primarily has, the main protagonists are teenagers, and it's dealing with their world. And if you think about any of the things I think that teenagers grapple with, those seem to be the subject matters. It's identity, it's relationships with family, with others, and, trying to find your own sense of place and who you are. So I think that some of those are the big focus points. They're teenagers kind of dealing with kind of figuring out who they are as people. And I think that kind of just defines like that focus on teenage. I think it goes across boundaries in many ways because, adults, we've lived through that, trauma that was high school or whatnot. But so we can identify often just to kind of see how people navigate and figure out their own sense of self. So really that's the main.
Matthew, how would you define a new adult as a character, and what are some key aspects of it that can be seen in the books?
So for the new adult genre, I kind of feel like a lot of discourse is about like what new adult really means, and a lot of people keep putting it on like the age of the characters. I feel like it's kind of a blend actually of both the characters and what they're going through in the story, as well as like the readers you're aspiring to, hit with your book. So for me, young adult is usually they're outside of that high school age. They're no longer in that, and they're starting to kind of like face adult problems for the first time. The reason I specifically made my series New Adult was because you're going to grow, since it's a series, you're going to grow with these characters. So they're going to face more and more kind of challenging adult. Like, so the first book, a lot of people say kind of feels a little more young adult, feels a little more like it reads young adult. But as the series keeps going on, you're definitely hitting more like topics that would fall within new adult. You're getting some spice, you're getting like things like that a lot of people wouldn't categorize in the young adult genre anymore. So I feel like it kind of depends. It's like this blend of like both the character's age and what they're going through. Like I know college romances a lot of people feel are much more new adult because they're no longer in that high school, the problems they're facing and the things that they're experiencing in the book. So I'm kind of where I'm at.
Holly, why does differentiating between the two genres matter, and how do those differences impact your writing process?
Yeah, I think like knowing if a book that you want to read is YA versus NA is important because some people want to read one or the other genre. So you want to like set up readers' expectations. You want to make sure that you have the right audience in mind. So if someone wants to read about like that first heartbreak and first love and all of that, they're probably going to want to read the YA book. Whereas if they're looking, if they're in their 20s or something, wanting to read something about, a little more mature, about those experiences is like, okay, after that first love, now what? Then they're probably going to want to read new adult. So it makes sense. You want to have the readers know what they're getting into. So you're targeting the right audience. And then, how does it end? Oh yeah. So for the writing process, so then kind of like what they said, what's the difference between YA and NA? Like then that kind of dictates like what happens in the plot. So, in Diamond, like there's that first love, first kiss, first fight, all of that. And so, whereas if it was a new adult, I'd probably be writing then something a little more mature, maybe the fight wouldn't be as, simple. It'd be like, oh gosh, they're fighting over this. Well, yeah, they're in high school. So, or high school age rather. So that kind of what dictated my writing process.
Yeah, how does marketing change based on if a book is young adult versus if it's young adult? And why do those changes no matter how small matter?
I think for mine, I'm going to speak for mine. One is no spice. One has spice. And there are readers that are very specific on, I want spice or I do not want spice. So I'm like, here's your young adult one. There's no spice. A new adult, you can kind of slip that in there. I feel like new adult is kind of fluid in between YA and adults, where a lot of it kind of overlaps one way or the other. But like Holly was saying, I really like that she mentioned, you know, the emotional range of the characters. Teenagers tend to be more angsty, tend to be more emotional. Things are so heightened. As you get older, you have more experiences. You have more tools to kind of deal with them. So yeah, I would say for marketing, I just want to make sure it's known that like this is dealing with geared towards younger issues. This is geared towards maybe older issues, more aged up, and then the spice level for romance for me.
Yeah, and I think like that's changed because like new adult is still somewhat like fairly new, and especially in like the trad pub world, like there's not, well, maybe there is now, I don't know, but at least like recently, you know, there wasn't like a shelf of just like new adult books. It was just YA or adult. And so there were a lot of authors that were writing these books that really should have been categorized as new adult, but they had to pick either YA or adult. And so that was that kind of conundrum where like there's a lot of books that are categorized as YA that have spice in it, open door romance scenes that probably aren't really appropriate for the YA audience. And so that's why I think things started to go into like, okay, that's what this new adult is for, this 18 plus. And I think it's good to differentiate whether your book has spice or not, because yeah, that's a big thing that you'd want to differentiate for young adult readers for sure.
Okay. Eddie, how do you feel your audience changes based on if your book is young adult or new adult? And why does you think that matters? I know it's kind of forward if I know questions, but or does it matter at all?
I think it definitely matters. I think they brought up some really good points where it is really important for certain differentiations where, you know, if people want a young adult feel, they're most likely not going to be looking for a book that's got like heavy spice or anything like that in it. And I do think there's something to be said between like, there definitely is a gray area between young adult and adult where like you still have people that are growing. I think especially for books, if you're writing something that's coming of age, there's a lot of ways to do coming of age that isn't young adult. And there's a lot of things like, think about how your 20s start. You start where you can't even legally drink and you end potentially owning a house. Like a lot happens in that decade. And I think that's what the new adult genre is trying to represent. And I think that's why it's very important to like differentiate between, you know, yes, this is high school, young adult, for those feelings, both for like how you're writing your characters. If you're writing something coming of age, just as an example, your characters are going to be coming of age in very different ways. And you can write coming of age adult too. Like you learn a lot of things, 30s, 40s that like, you know, hit very different than when you were in high school, but it's all growth and things like that. So I think it is very important to understand and differentiate those things, both for your audience and for how you're writing these characters. Was that the whole question?
You're all good. Yep. Okay. So, Holly, how did you decide you wanted to write a young adult story instead of an adult story? What to read that genre?
Yeah, so I was writing stories from like 6 years old and everything, but then I really got more into writing in high school when I was writing fan fiction for the video game Kingdom Hearts. And then after writing the fan fiction, I'm like, I want to write stories on my own. I started getting like my own ideas. And so because I was in high school, I kind of gravitated towards writing kids my age. So they're, 16 or whatever. And so I kind of let that first story kind of fall to the wayside. I never finished it. Through college, went to physical therapy school, started working. And then I found out about NaNoWriMo, which is now no more, but National Novel Writing Month. And I was like, oh, write a novel in a month. Like I can go back to that story I started in high school and finish it. But those were still high school characters. So I kind of just, and then all the other ideas, because our writer brains just come up with random things. Just, what's your inspiration? Oh. But so like I kind of just stuck to that, young adult audience. And then from, being an avid reader as well, I started, I read a lot of young adult fantasy. And so I like to love the books and devour them. And so I'm like, well, I'm even in my 30s, love young adult books and even middle grade books. I read middle grade too. And so like, I think I just love what it has to offer, like the first love, the heartbreak, like it never gets old for me. So I think that kind of carried through even to this day, and will be. I'll probably be 80 writing YA.
Nancy, what about you for that question?
I teach high school English and creative writing, so I feel like I've been in high school for a very long time. 32 years. So I think for me, it's just I'm living their world and I'm seeing so many nuanced ways that young adult just appealed to me. I teach a group of struggling readers. And, just talking with them, like, what is it that you really are looking for in a book? What is it that you want? So I think that's kind of what got me into the young adult. I am newly retired. So I don't know what my next is. Like, my next idea, now I'm not in high school anymore. And my next idea is an adult woman. I'm like, oh, so that's going to be a whole new thing for to switch out. But that's probably just kind of why I focused on that genre, even though I'm well past that. So
Yeah. I didn't think decide you wanted to write a new adult story for the young adult story. I know you kind of wrote both, but what drew you to the genres respectively?
So I would say the romance. It's a little darker than my debut novel, which is young adult. My young adult one is very, childhood romance. It's not a lot of spice. It's very sweet. The Fall of Snow is my new adult, so it's definitely spicier. It's got more romance. It's a little darker. It's an enemies to lovers. They themselves are aged up. The MMC is a warrior captain, so he is not a teenager. He is a little older than that. So literally they're older, but also the themes and the romance level, that's all a little more aged up. And I wanted to be able to kind of expand on that and have a little more romance.
Maggie, how about you for that question?
So I think what was really the ending factor for me was I didn't want to limit my character's growth and forever classifying it as a young adult, because they are going to get older with the series. They're going to grow. They're going to go through things that would pull it out of that young adult genre. So both for my readers and for my characters, that's why I chose new adult, is because this is going to be like a 6-book series. So like they're not going to be 19 the whole series. And that's why the first book does read a little more young adult, is because you're getting them fresh from that like high school age. But I didn't want, especially to pull in a bunch of young adult readers, and as the series grows and, more books come out, I didn't want to do them the disservice, and like then they'd start reading stuff that they can't relate to or aren't comfortable with or anything like that. So that's why I really stuck with the more new adult genre.
That's interesting because, like, I don't read a lot where you kind of follow them through the ages and they kind of change. Like, the only thing I can think of is, like, Harry Potter. Like, 11 years, this is technically a middle grade. And then by the end, this is like young adult. And definitely, gets a lot darker as the books go on. So I think that's cool that, like, you can start in, like, one age category within this series and then transition to another. Do you know any other, like, series that do that, or what's kind of inspired you with that?
I would say, so I definitely grew up reading Harry Potter. So I think that was definitely, the start of my inspiration. When I started writing this, I was actually in high school. I took 10 whole years of my life to do this first book. But when I started, and I think that might have been partially what led me to, is like, as I kind of came back to it older in my 20s, I was like, I want to have characters that kind of experience. And I was like, I love where they start, though. I love where I started this book. And I was like, I don't want to scrap all of that just because I'm older now. And so I think that's kind of partially what did it. I did also grow up with Harry Potter, and I loved waiting for the new books to come out, and I kind of got to follow them, and I kind of grew up with them. Like, I was like, I also am another year older. But yeah, definitely what you said, like, by the end of the series, it was definitely heavier. It was definitely darker. There was a lot of other stuff happening in that book where I feel like if I picked it up fresh off the grind, I wouldn't have related to those older books if I like binged them. It was nice to. So that's kind of, I think that's where.
Italy. What I this Holly, Tara, Maggie, if you have any input you'd like to add, please raise your hand when scared when Angelique's done, and then I'll have the answer as well. So Angelique, what are some tropes and what purpose do they serve when writing stories? What are some tropes that you feel work in new adult books that you might not use in young adult book or vice versa?
I think narrative tropes kind of one help you figure out like, do you want spice or not spice, right? But do you like the friends to lovers, or do you not like that, reading those types of stories? So I think tropes definitely help connect readers with the writing by knowing, oh, this is going to be, the hardcore detective person or whatever. Like you know the stories that you tend to get drawn towards. I think a necessary part to all of that is like, each writer bringing their own creative spin to whatever that trope is. So I think they do work as kind of a foundational, help kind of set the whole kind of outline maybe, or just give a structure. But finding some way to make it a different story. Certainly many people have said, with all stories, there are no new stories. Somebody even said that the other day, like, well, it's just, what the spin is. Like, it's probably Shakespeare covered it all, for all the things that happened. But I think it gives that framework, and then the writer gets to play with it and maybe subvert expectations in some way, or bring it into something that's more modern, or a different setting. Like, just try to play with things. So I think they're helpful for that. I think they could be harmful if you don't make any of those changes and it becomes all that same story. I've already read that. And I don't know if there is one that would work better. I mean, like you all said, it's like some of the same issues. It's just now they're in a workplace, or it's how to, get along with, visa, or instead of dealing with parents, now you're because you're a teenager and their expectations, now you're dealing with parents and changes in their lives, or they're getting older, or what they still expect from you as an adult. So I don't know if you guys think that there's any like trope or anything that wouldn't work with YA.
Yeah, no. We'll start with Maggie.
I was gonna say, I feel like with YA and like young adult, new adult, I feel like it's not necessarily there aren't tropes that work. It's how you approach them. So like you can have found family in both, but your found family in your YA might be more like they finally found their people in their high school group, and your found family in new A might be that they lost their family, disowned their family, something along those lines, and they found their group of people out in the world. So I feel like that's kind of where, and I feel like that's why there's so much discourse where people are like, saying like, is new adult even worth it? Because there is so much overlap that can happen. It's really just about how you approach it and how the characters are going through it, and like how their growth is happening in the book. Same with coming of age in a YA and coming of age in a new adult is going to be very different vibes, very different ways they're coming of age, very different. So yeah, I feel like besides like honestly spice factor, I feel like I don't know if there's really any tropes out there that it's like, oh yeah, that would not fit in a YA.
I was trying to think of the tropes as they went along, and I was like, oh, well, how dark is it? Like, how dark could it be? Because YA, when you typically think of YA, you're like, oh, it's lighter. It's not as dark of themes. But then I thought of the Shatter Me series by Tahira Mafi, and I'm like, that's pretty dark, and it was YA. So truly, I don't think there's like a structure. Like, you can't put it in a box.
Yeah, I think how you said like how you approach it. Yeah, because I was thinking about like, oh, some typical tropes are like love triangles or something. Well, in high school, yeah, it's gonna be like immature, kind of petty, like whatever. They're gonna make stupid mistakes, and then like I was thinking about that for like new adult, and it's like, well, maybe there's workplace romance, or it's hard for me to like think at NA for like fantasy. Because I just don't read as much of it, but well, now I am. But they sound really good. But so yeah, I think it's just it just like changes the level with the genre, or the age category rather. But I think the tropes is important because it sets up those reader expectations, like I was saying before, because like mentioning the love triangle, I've read people like, I hate love triangles. I don't want, well, I don't know who doesn't want enemies to lovers. I haven't met someone who doesn't want that. But there's some things for me, like I'm like, you know, and that helps with marketing too, because I'm like, oh, you said only one horse, enemies to lovers, found family. Like, I know, yeah, I'm like, I'm in. Like, there's some, like, no matter how many times I read these tropes, like, I know I'm going to get a fresh take on it with this new story. And it's kind of comforting to know, like, oh, these are the tropes in it. Like, that's comforting. I know what to expect, and I know I enjoy that, so I should enjoy it with the story.
Yeah. Now that they have all the answers to the question, what is the most important piece of advice you think aspiring authors should hear, and what makes it so important? We will start with Becky. Slow down. Can I start the other one?
Stuck again. I could start, yeah. I would say, write. I mean, I think that was the hardest thing for me. I wanted to be a writer for a very long time, and I didn't sit down and write. So I started with, I raised kids and worked full time, and all those excuses. I don't have time to do it. I don't have time. I started with 20 minutes on a Thursday night, and I was like, these 20 minutes was just like a lot of time. But it was a Thursday, and then I could steal some time over the weekends, and then I was like back at the grind at work. But then I would get to that Thursday, and I'm like, So I think, just write. I think just sit down and write for yourself. If it's your stories that you want to tell, just do it for yourself. That's what, will get you started.
Following off of what you just said, I just saw V.E. Schwab for her new book that just came out. And she mentioned, because they asked a similar question to her, and she's mentioned, even if you have 10 minutes, you can write. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you can write in those 10 minutes. You can find another 10 minutes. You can find, guess what? At the end of the day, you have maybe 60 minutes. You have a whole hour of writing done. Even if you're just brainstorming, even if you're outlining. So that was her advice. But my advice would be, don't compare. Don't compare your story to another person's story. Don't compare your writing to another person's writing. Everyone's is different. And don't go backwards. Just keep going. The first draft is supposed to be ugly. It's supposed to be messy. Keep going. You need a skeleton, then you can add all the meat later and fix it. So yeah. Colin?
I'd say find your writer friends, join a writing community, because that's what's really helped me. With all of the ups and downs of the writer life, it took me a month to write the first draft of Diamond, and the sequel, I just finished the first draft last week, and it took me 14 months. And I never thought I was going to finish it. But now I'm like, this can actually be a book. But so there's so many struggles, and what helped me through that 14 months is the friends that I made. There's a whole community on YouTube called AuthorTube, that's where I kind of started off on, and then also on Instagram, writergram, authorgram, whatever you want to call it. But I found friends there. They're in Indiana. Now I visit them. I go to their baby showers and birthday parties and everything. And I met them online. They were not the scary online friends that I made. And then we meet. Sometimes you want to find your accountability buddies. That's gonna hold you accountable. Hey, do you want to hop on Facebook Messenger or Zoom or whatever and write for 30 minutes? I kind of have a mastermind group with some of my writer friends where we meet every week and, brainstorm. We either brainstorm some marketing tactics, or if no one has anything to present, we just write. We do sprints. And that's just really helped me, because I probably would have given up, because writers are the hardest on themselves, and, there's writer's block, ruts, and you need your community. So find that community no matter where it is.
You probably got it.
I have a few. I agree with honestly everything everybody said. I think that's all great. Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't do it. Everyone has imposter syndrome. You're not alone. I think a couple of the things that I've kind of learned along the way is make sure you're writing for yourself, and remember, it's your story at the end of the day. I am big on my alpha reader. I'm big on my beta readers. I love them. I love their feedback. But sometimes, like, at the same time, I have to remember to take everything with a grain of salt, because, they might say something. And, my first book, I had someone that was like, oh, I don't like this scene. Like, it gave me the ick. And I was like, oh, I'd hate for people to get the ick. And I started rewriting the whole scene, and I was like, I really liked that scene, though. Like, I liked how I had it. So I ended up putting it, reverting it back to how I had it. But so yeah, definitely remember, at the end of the day, it's your story. Feedback is great. Do not read reviews. Just, that's for readers. You're going to be tempted, and you're going to want it, and you're going to hurt your own feelings, but that is for readers. That is not for authors, because people are very honest in them. But definitely just remember to write for yourself at the end of the day, because I've definitely been asked a bunch of times if I've got the really hot tropes going on right now, and my book doesn't, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to, find its reader people that absolutely love it. And it has found people that love it, and kind of like that it's not like the enemies to lovers of this. And there's nothing wrong with those. Listen, I love my enemies to lovers. I love it. But I feel like you can tell when someone wrote a book for them versus when they tried to write a book to sell. And so that would be my big advice, because that was something I started to do, and I'm really glad I went back and didn't